There you are. Where the hell you been hiding?
Avoiding the backlash of you running your fucking mouth.
Oh, what's that supposed to mean? Hurry up. We got a fucking show to do.
What's this week's topic?
It's the best and the worst of NXT.
Good thinking. Get the heat off of you and put it on Credo.
What's that supposed to mean?
Because that means he gets to talk about Nia Jax, his love for Japanese wrestlers, and a bunch of other shit I don't want to even mention because I don't want to get fucking canceled.
Oh, Mom.
All right.
Cheers.
Welcome to episode 257. I'm Credo.
And I'm your drunk host, Angry Cooter, the social assassin.
The man with the smallest liver in town. How's that?
No, it's just the most overused and
The
overworked.
most overused and working liver. Oh, man. Welcome back, guys. Check us out. We're on video now. YouTube.com/@anotherwrestlingpodcast. From Spotify to Apple Podcasts.
Yes.
Like us, subscribe to us. Let us know how you feel.
Where are we doing this podcast from, Steve?
Beacon Podcasting.
That's correct.
In Beacon, New York. Check out beaconpodcasting.io. Guys, talk to Sal from Beacon Podcasting. Tell him we sent you. If you're in the Hudson Valley area or beyond, come on down to Beacon Podcasting, guys. That's where AWP has found another breath of life. He has brought us back from the dead. We were down a few years, now back and doing it all over, Cooter. I don't know.
If you're going to keep it up like this, we're going to be dead again.
That's why I have him here. He states the facts.
I keep you honest, bro.
Keeps me honest.
I keep you honest.
So let's keep each other honest then. How about we'll talk some NXT, the good, the bad, the ugly? I don't know if you want to call it ugly, but there's some gimmicks that have come out through the years that didn't quite make. Well, they did make the main roster, but maybe did they flourish? Did they fail? Let's talk about some of those because there's been a lot of NXT superstars.
So you want to talk about what we brought up last week?
Yeah. So
got you.
Yeah. No. So we're going to talk about that. But before any of that happens, Cooter, there's one thing that happened on NXT last week on NXT Heatwave right after Money in the Bank. Did you see this finisher? And I messaged you right after it happened because
yes.
I'm like, it blows my mind because I'm trying to think back in the history of pro wrestling in my head, and I'm like, I can't think of any other match that ended like this for a championship where Ethan Page became the new NXT champ, and it was like. Without even going through the step-by-step, you've seen it. He falls on the guy getting kicked, and then he ends up winning as the champ was pulled out of the ring.
Yeah, you usually see somebody get hit with a finisher and, like a triple threat, and then that person gets thrown out of the ring and somebody else wins on somebody else's finisher. This was kind of cool. I kind of enjoyed it. It was good. It was different, It's not something you're going to see on a regular basis. Is that considered a dusty finish, Credo?
Yes, that's it, guys. The dusty finish, it was, but I think it was a good heel finish. Page, all ego Ethan Page is the heel, right? So he won it in a heel way, right? So he doesn't need to win the championship like, I beat him 1, 2, 3, no problem, right? He's not the face. So like winning it like that was awesome. It gives more like, it makes me want to watch NXT, right? Like you're like, what happened?
He's killing it. I am loving Ethan Page down there.
Another star to outshine from a company that he wasn't shining in. This is
former guest, I believe, too.
Former guest, and like to come from one place to the other, and it's almost like a billboard. Like, hey, if your contract's ending and you want to come over here. I was just made champ, and in like a cool way, like not a cheap way, right? So it's a nice advertising platform to be like, why you hang out over there? Come on over NXT. But I just had to talk about that. That was a very unique win. But NXT through the years, Cooter, we've seen a lot of shows, a lot of early shows from the Mid-Hudson Civic Center, now the MJN Center. Even up in Albany, New York. We were up in Albany for an NXT show where it was headlined by Finn Balor. And there's
I think he was tagging with Austin Aries.
Samoa Joe had a match. There was a lot of crazy.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Those were the days.
That old of NXT, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen a lot of things come and go. But, like I said earlier, the good, the bad, the ugly. There's a lot of good that came out of it. A lot of bad that came out of it. And a lot of, I don't know, it's still probably in the works that came out of it. But my biggest question is, people listening out there for NXT, Cooter, Angry Cooter, could this have been a Vince McMahon or a Kevin Dunn fault to where, I don't think they really respected NXT maybe the way that they should have. They didn't really treat it like a third brand. It was still their farm system, and they still, I don't know, maybe they just didn't like who Triple H built up. And then when it came over, maybe that's why they kind of like died some of these gimmicks that we'll talk about? Or do you think, if that wasn't the case, can Triple H have more success stories now that he's kind of the man running it with his buddy HBK?
I don't think that it was Vince's fault. I mean, because he had a lot of guys under his tenure that were super successful. And even some of the gimmicks that they used down there, he made work on the main roster. Sometimes some things translate differently from, the minor leagues, let's call it that, to, the main stage. And, it's a different audience because I feel like NXT is more rabid wrestling fan as opposed to the main roster, which is more that sports entertainment fan. It's different. It's apples and oranges.
But now even
you don't like to compare fruits.
Well, what about
Pause.
What about the time where Triple H was out for his heart procedure or whatever he had done, and then Vince kind of like gutted his gold NXT and made it the splatter paint NXT in one location, kind of a feel like bright, like SmackDown lights, Raw lights. Like Vince took it over, kind of tried to make it his own thing, and then handed it back over to Triple H, I guess, when he came back with Shawn Michaels. I don't know. It went to a whole weird NXT, right? So
listen, I think we had reached the peak of like top performers coming out of that system, and there was a lull.
Yeah.
There wasn't the star power that they had for the longest time, because you'll see as some of the guys that we're going to talk about, I mean, it's just name after name after name. I don't feel like we have that, especially when Vince took it over. You're pretty much starting from scratch with new stars, lesser known people from the indies. And you know what? When you have a situation like that, I don't think it's a bad idea to change the look of the show, change the feel of the show. It failed.
Sure.
It is what it is. But it doesn't mean that it was a bad idea to try.
Sure. All right. Also, like I said, Vince tried slapping up a coat of paint on something that Triple H made. It changed a little bit to the fans' eye. But let's talk about some of these things that, succeeded. Like I said, the good, the bad, not so much the ugly, but maybe still in a transition. I don't know how you want to put it these days.
Let's start with the good, bro.
I think the biggest names coming out of NXT, when I first heard about names coming out of NXT, were the four horsewomen: Charlotte, Becky, Bayley, and Sasha. Look at what they went on to do from NXT. Charlotte almost tying her father with title wins. Becky, another big name player. Bayley, current WWE Women's Champion. And Sasha Banks, currently in the land of make-believe. But she's, they were the top women, of their time coming from NXT, the matches that they were putting on.
And started a women's revolution.
Yep. Yeah.
They're the reason why I feel women's wrestling, got such a good jump start on the main roster for WWE. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't say we'd be seeing bra and panty matches, but they would still be considered the piss breaks, and that's not what they are now. These women are tough. They are great workers. They are great performers, and you know what? These are your leaders. These are the people. These are the reasons why we have such a great roster right now.
No, for sure. I mean, going back a few years, the pay-per-view Evolution, where it was all women's pay-per-view.
Oh,
I know. It's
such a great show.
So going back to that, though, that was I was on the red carpet that night, Cooter. I was actually on one of Total Divas episodes. Like, you see me on the red carpet. I'm that guy.
Look at you trying to put yourself over.
Find the episode,
Sal,
throw it up.
I was on the red carpet.
Not to name drop, but I don't see anybody else.
Let me tell you where
Balance.
I was. Shut the fuck up.
I was this tiny guy. Anyway, let's be on the point. Anyway, so I actually talked to Rhea Ripley then, but she was current NXT Women's Champion Rhea Ripley.
Oh yeah.
And even going back to, it was not the Cruiserweight Classic, but they had the women's tournament.
The Mae Young Classic.
The Mae Young Classic, and she was on there, and she was a totally different Rhea Ripley too. Like, she had a different color hair, longer hair.
I think she was a blonde.
Yeah, so she was she's definitely progressed, and like one of the biggest success stories who recently just returned from injury, Rhea Ripley. Like one of the only women to like be a full like draw for the main event on one of the shows on Raw, right? So what a success story.
How lucky of a man is fucking Dominic Mysterio?
Dominic.
You go from Rhea Ripley to being your mommy to just being sexually harassed at work by Liv Morgan, and you know what? That must be like the greatest feeling ever. Like, which one of these girls are gonna,
a superstar in the making? Not, it's the Mysterios, man.
Is he gonna be the new Latino Heat? I'm just saying, he does a lot of, Eddie Guerrero stuff. I mean, Latino Heat. I mean, these aren't slobs, bro. These are pretty impressive pulls. I'm just saying.
I mean, it started off with a little nepotism, but like daddy bringing the son into work day, but it kind of grew into what it is now, and
it's like Latino Heat with X-Pot heat. It's weird. I love it.
Oh, I love it. It's the kid's come a long way. He's
how about this?
Yeah,
another successful woman. Since you bring up the Mae Young Classic.
Yep,
Bianca Belair. And that was when I don't think anybody saw it coming. And I remember one of our episodes when we were talking about that. I think she got knocked out in the first round. I forget who she was facing. But she had such a great showing. And I was blown away because you had the hair whip, just feats of strength, which you typically don't see, from the women's division.
Yeah.
I was blown away. And I was like, this woman is going to be a star. Now, off mic, Cologne was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, dude, no. She's going to be huge. And lo and behold, I'm going to be one of those internet marks. Called it.
Called it.
Called
Hashtag
it.
Called it.
Hashtag called it. No, but that's another classic example. Do you feel like out of the success stories, we've had better success stories from NXT from the women or the men?
It's tough. I mean, there's been a lot of women's success stories, but there's also been a lot of men. I mean, look at, for example, Walter Gunther, whatever.
Yes.
I mean,
currently.
And when he was big on the indies, they moved him over to NXT UK, was on there for a while. Then
didn't he not want to work in the United States?
Yeah, something like that.
Some
I think.
weird
and then,
shit like that.
And he just became a big star, and they moved him over to NXT, another big star over there, coming right up, and to where a lot of people were upset with the name change, but I get it, whatever. Things happen, but it doesn't matter what name you can call him, right?
I
He's
have
still
a
talented
natural
for what he
hate
does.
for the name Walter.
Walter, yeah.
I just do.
I had an Uncle Walter once. That's I don't know.
I'm pleading the fifth.
So, no, I mean, there's a lot of guys to look at. Drew McIntyre kind of redeemed himself a little bit down there.
You figure
Left,
it
came
started
back.
off in TNA.
Yeah.
After he got released from WWE, he went down there, put in some work, got himself over, came back to NXT as one of those stars that we just need a little polish.
Yep.
And he just demolished everybody down there and came up to the main roster. Who did he pair him with when he hit the main roster? Do you remember?
No, I forget.
I'm pretty sure it was Dolph Ziggler.
Oh.
Remember and everybody was saying, oh, look, it's Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash all over again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash, Enzo and Big Cass, because that's who I think about, like a Shawn Michaels and Diesel kind of thing. Enzo, former guest, 2-time, 3-time guest on our show, with Big Cass, another former guest, but Big Bill now in AEW. But these guys, I don't know. I love the ring talk. I love the smack talk and Enzo. I love what they were doing. Like, you can't teach that. It was big when we were watching old NXT up here. They were like a younger act on it when we were watching guys like Finn Balor and Samoa Joe. And do you know Enzo's story to where John Cena overheard him doing something backstage, and they are not where they are today without John Cena? Because John Cena saw him backstage at NXT, hearing him do a promo in promo class, and then Cena said something about putting those guys on the show that night or something, and the rest is history. Don't quote me; it's on YouTube, right? You could.
And I'm gonna go across the grain here. I don't really care.
Yeah.
But everybody knows Enzo for his promos.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna sit here and say, there's a difference between the way you work in NXT and the way you work on the main roster.
Yeah.
They were not bad workers in NXT. They were good in-ring performers. Obviously, when you get to the main roster, they try to water that down. So for all those people who say he can't work, the motherfucker can work. I mean, he's not putting on 5-star classics, by any means, but talented in-ring work, great ring psychology, and that's something that they learn down there. And sometimes it's the lessons that they learn that translate to the main roster, not necessarily the gimmick. Love those two.
No, yeah, for sure. Been a lot of people. I mean, going back even before the 4 Horsewomen, you had The Shield, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose.
Excuse me, John Moxley.
John Moxley. So, I mean, just one of the biggest things I think coming out of NXT is where they came on the Survivor Series and did the whole, beat up the guys to make their main roster debuting on Survivor Series. What a way to debut! That was probably one of the biggest NXT debuts.
Who did they beat up, and who were they the heaters for?
You probably know, 'cause
I know that they were the heaters for CM Punk.
Yeah,
I forget who the hell they beat up for him.
It's so here's the thing, guys. We're 42-ish now.
Well, yeah, we're gonna be 42 this year.
And it's I'm 42. I'm like half a year ahead of you.
Oh, that's right.
I know. So I just forget a lot of
Age
things.
before beauty.
I know. So, I mean, we're not here to quote. We're not here to be like, oh, look, I know the date when this. We know it happened, but we
just remember that's how they debuted. And
but what a big debut, right? What a memorable, one of the biggest groups ever to debut.
And what's crazy about that to me is they never performed with Punk in matches, I don't believe. We never saw a CM Punk Roman Reigns. We never saw a Punk Ambrose. We never saw a Punk and Rollins. And now that he's back, we might actually get the opportunity to see these years later when they're all, like they say, iron sharpens iron. And now these guys are at the top of their game and Punk is just a legend. So the stuff that we could potentially see out of that, I just can't wait. I can't wait, dude.
No, and some of those guys like Seth Rollins were
the Tribal Chief versus the best in the world.
I know. It's going to happen.
Oh, my God.
So, like guys like Seth Rollins, though, too, on there. What they didn't know at that time, they were part of the class too in NXT, to where they were also a part of it when it was Florida Championship Wrestling. So it was FCW started this, and then they like name changed it, and those guys kind of went over. And also former guest and friend who's also in the this kind of a class was Bill Carr, also now known as Dutch from the Righteous on AEW, who's a local in Newburgh. I'll have to get him on the show. But like he was part of that class. He was let go, and I remember talking to him right after that part. It sucks. One of his gimmicks was, I used to be signed by WWE, and it was hilarious at the time, right? Finn Balor came in there as a success from the indies. Everybody still wanted him to do body paint. He was doing some body paint in NXT, but now he doesn't really do it anymore. So like that was his thing. That was his gimmick to do like the whole.
He didn't do that every week though.
But it was like every pay-per-view kind of a thing in New Japan. Like just change up the body paint for what he's wrestling.
But I'm talking about even when he was in NXT, he wasn't doing that every week.
No, yeah, it was like the Demon too. Yeah, it wasn't every week.
Yeah, that was just like specialty, like big matches where
I liked it. It's the pageantry, right? It's the pageantry.
But see, it was kind of cool because you never knew what you were going to get if you were just going to get. And then I hated it because when he came to the main roster,
Vince had a
then they put him in the black leather jacket, and instead of that cool entrance, he's just sitting there popping the collar on that. I'm just like,
he's worked on a lot of things. He had like a shine, like a see-through, like a shiny mask he came out with once. Then he had like that spike mask.
He had the rainbow in his tights.
They kept trying to give him stuff, and then they gave him
weird.
So, but I still love Finn Balor. It's just like I want to get back to doing what he was doing. Like that could be another product of like he's still great. He was the first Universal Champion for 5 seconds, but he was still the first.
But he still does it.
Yeah, he still
does it. I mean,
he's a great talent to have,
even as a Judgment Day member.
Yeah,
right now. I mean, you remember he was in the Judgment Day against Edge at WrestleMania, and he came out. It was. Oh, what did they try to say? Edge was Brood Edge versus the Demon Finn Balor.
Yeah,
like, come on.
So I mean, a lot more success stories. I mean, like look at Bray Wyatt and his family, the Bray Wyatt family, right?
The Wyatt family.
So
Brody Lee.
Yeah.
Upside Down Sheamus.
Upside Down Sheamus. If you guys can Google that, you know what that is.
Yes.
So I mean, look at where he went, right? Incredible success story with him. But I'm just looking through some of these names. You brought up Shayna Baszler before.
I did.
Nakamura kind of had a lot. I think a lot maybe more success in NXT, but I could have been under the Vince thing. I think he's just happy to be there. Last I heard is that he gets to live in Florida and surf all the time, so he doesn't really care how they use him. He's just happy to be in America.
And you don't have to work
life.
that. You figure how many years did he work in Japan doing strong style, and he was called the king of strong style. And you get to come over here. You have to work a great schedule. You don't know when you're going to work because you don't see him every week.
Yep.
So he just enjoys being there. I don't blame him. Shit, if I don't have to go to work every fucking week. And I'm sure he's not making peanuts either. But, I mean, he's had classics. I mean.
And he's older in age now. He's not 20 years old. But
do you remember his debut?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Him and Sami Zayn.
One of the greatest NXT matches.
One of the greatest matches
Brooklyn,
ever.
New York.
And I remember Cologne telling us, he said, these two have never touched.
Yep.
Like this is a first time ever. And to see two people who have never had any experience with each other, to have a match of that magnitude was just incredible. And look, both of them today. I mean, Nakamura, I don't think he's had the success that Sammy's had on the main roster. And it took Sammy a long time to get there. But he's had some classic moments. He's a Royal Rumble winner. He had that main event WrestleMania match against AJ Styles. Of course, let's not talk about the low blows and that shitty.
And they do use subtitles now for him, which is good because he can't cut an American promo. Which is
Me no speak English.
Which is fine, but like to make him like that villain to have subtitle, like of course they got to use it for the Japanese wrestlers. Don't say it, but still.
Do you like face Nakamura or do you like heel Nakamura?
They're. I like singing to the song coming out, right? Like the music
From
coming
the
out. But then
face
the
part of
heel
it.
with the heel vignettes were awesome. Like it just makes him a villain, and like that's all he needs to be. He doesn't need to cut like a 30-second promo.
Dude,
it just needs to be filmed like that.
My favorite Nakamura thing was when he was a heel, and he would be cutting the promo backstage with the what was that blonde who used to do the interviews? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Point is, he's cutting a full-fledged promo, no problem, and then she would ask him a question, and that's when he started doing the. Me no speak English. You just cut a promo. What are you talking about? The greatest shit ever, dude.
Moving right along, we have NXT former women's champion Paige, who did a lot of things with that belt outside of the company, but she was one of the biggest names to.
Credo, this is a family show.
I didn't say anything. And it's like if you know, you know. And they're probably going to Google it right now, so don't Google it. So Paige was
Don't be all R-rated like your boy Xavier Woods.
Xavier Woods. Another, well, if you know, you know. One
What
of
a
those
great
things.
porn name that would be. Xavier Woods.
Xavier's Wood.
Xavier's Wood?
Yeah, maybe.
All right.
Guys like Neville, former guest of the show many years ago.
Oh, wow.
AJ Lee, success story, for what she did coming up, WWE Women's, well, it was a Divas champion before it was Women's champion, so she was the Divas champion. But a lot of other successes,
Kairi Sane, the first winner of the Mae Young Classic. Who did she beat, Credo?
I don't remember.
Shayna Baszler. Come on, step your fucking game up. You're going to talk to Daddy.
I gotta Google these things before the show, or just pretend I know them. Of course, I know them, Cooter. Before moving to some gimmicks that maybe didn't work, what about Rusev? Remember Rusev Day? How over was that?
Oh, that's fantastic.
And like now, what is he sitting at home collecting checks? Like what is he doing?
They don't even use him.
He used to look huge too. He used to look a lot bigger than what he does now. Like
You think?
Some of his first NXT photos, if you look it up, he has this long leather like cape. It looks like a dress, but it's like part of his like whatever. I don't know what he was back then, but it's like his first gimmick in NXT.
Bulgarian brute.
Yeah, the Bulgarian brute.
Yes.
You have a name in here, but I kind of want to bring him up with something else, which I'm going to get to later. So I'm going to do a little copy and paste down here.
Oh, look at you being a dick.
Because I think it'll be a good thing to bring up down there. I'm just going to put it over there.
Okay.
So
I see where you're going.
So wait, okay, we talked about some of the most successes that happened out here. Let's talk about some maybe gimmicks that didn't work on the main
I
roster.
want you to know, people. I mean, the list that I came up with is huge. We did not mention everybody on this list.
Yeah.
And this is all conjecture because
No particular
you
order.
you might feel like people that we thought did a great job on the main roster suck balls.
Yeah.
This is just an opinion. We are not professionals. We are just big mouth marks just like you. We just happen to have cooler equipment to put our stuff on the internet with.
That's it. We're the
than you do.
consumers. We pay the same money you do, and this is
Thanks, Al.
We're talking. Thanks, Al. Beaconpodcasting.io. No, that's exactly it, guys. We're just sitting ringside, commenting on who we're talking about. But yeah, if we missed anybody, leave us a comment. Tell us maybe who you thought was the best,
Okay.
the worst.
Let's talk about some of the people on that list who are great in NXT, but didn't necessarily translate well to the main roster.
Okay.
All right, so the first name that comes to mind for me, Tyler Breeze, because he had great matches in NXT.
The selfie stick guy. The selfie stick.
No, that was the main roster. Let's not get it off. Oh, no, he did do that in NXT. You're right.
Yeah.
But he had this great little rivalry with William Regal, and he was always putting him in these matches, and it was just a great little storyline. I mean, NXT Brooklyn, it was the first one I went to. I was trashed. Poor Stevie had to sit there and watch me drink half a bottle of Belvedere when we're stuck in the Parkway. But Jushin Thunder Liger was his opponent.
Yeah.
And it was just an amazing thing to see. A talent like Tyler Breeze against a legend like that. And I remember to stand up, show him some respect. He don't watch wrestling. He's just standing there like this.
Yeah.
But then he goes to the main roster, and it's just, you put him in a tag with Fandango.
Breezango.
The Fashion Police gimmick.
They tried, but it's just...
it was just so...
Poor Tyler Breeze.
And then you had that fucking other gimmick where you had... Was it Breezango trying to get the Ascension over? Do you remember that shit?
Yep.
And now it's another failed team.
He had a great gimmick, and it's one of those things. I feel like they built the gimmick good in NXT. They handed it over to the main roster, and it didn't. He didn't make it, or did it? Was it just they didn't?
The Prince of Pretty did not translate well to the main roster.
Yeah,
and I feel horrible.
Or Vince maybe just didn't like it. We talked about having a little bit of a resurgence now. Bo Dallas, Bo Leave.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was okay then. I mean, it's not the greatest gimmick in the world.
Did
but
he do the Bo Leave thing down in NXT?
Champion. Yeah, he started it down there. Yeah, and brought it. I'm pretty sure he brought it up there, and everybody was Bo leaving. But
that was before my time, and that shit was trash. I'm sorry.
But that's another little thing to where he's been kind of like hiding in the back ever since. Like he had a few stints on TV. They didn't use him at all. He was just sitting backstage for years to like...
Him and Curtis Axel sitting in fucking catering.
That's it, yep. And it's like you have that legacy of that your dad is a former wrestler. Not only a former wrestler, but one of the, like IRS, right? Like a bigger name in the 80s to like... I always believed like those guys
intended.
could be Baby Perfect or Baby IRS or whatever they, like go under that. Like a Braun Breaker could be a Steiner. He's like, go with what your lineage is or whatever. And that's... to where I feel like Bo Dallas could have probably leaned on more instead of what they gave him. But I guess, nobody want,
Let me ask you this.
Baby IRS, that probably wouldn't work.
When it comes to Bo Dallas, I mean, I love what he's doing now.
Yeah.
Why do you think they didn't put him with his brother sooner, years ago? I mean, it would just make sense,
and
right?
they were a tag team too down in
you would
or FCW
think.
or whatever they were in before. But they were tag teams even before then to like, why not? They're brothers.
I don't get it.
Like
Bray was hot as fish grease. Bo had a good fan base. If you would have put them together or made Bo as part of the Wyatt family somehow,
boom.
Holy shit. I mean, we would have been off they would be printing money.
I know. One of those things, it's like I feel like one of those guys in that former regime just didn't like it, didn't care for it or whatnot. So I know one of the biggest things too when we were watching NXT around here is Bobby Roode.
Oh,
the whole entrance music, with
the Ric Flair robe and that awesome fucking theme song.
It's money. It was money. Everybody loved it. They brought him up. And then they just didn't know what to do with them again. What's going wrong? Because it's fine here. Just do the same thing over here. And they weren't doing it. And I'm like,
it was weird. I felt like it was because with him it's always like money. Like you remember when he was in TNA, and he was in that tag team Beer Money.
Yeah.
So he's always flaunting like he was loaded rich. So this character that they made in NXT, to me, it felt like a mix of Ric Flair and Ted DiBiase. It was just so cool.
Yeah. Even maybe a little bit of a Rick Rude or no? The
glow
coming out with the robe.
That's fair.
Whatever. That kind of reminds me
Absolutely.
a little bit about that.
I mean, the presentation was awesome. The entrance was awesome. The music was awesome. And Bobby Roode could cut a promo.
Yeah.
He could have a great match with pretty much anybody. I don't see how this doesn't get over. I'm super excited for him to get to the main roster. And then it fucking happens. And you're just sitting there like, you stepped on my dick. Like, what the fuck?
And like you said, the song was great. He was great. Promos were great. You come over from there, and it was like, why? Where's the misinterpretation happening? That like, can't you just do the same thing over there, over here, and see what happens? And
what's crazy is you would think that is something that would work because of the presentation.
Yeah,
like. We talked about Nakamura, and because he had the same thing, the music and the entrance, and Finn Balor with the music and the entrance. They had the total package. We're not talking about somebody like Adam Rose or fucking No Way Jose, which you knew was going to flop no matter what the fuck happened.
Jose. I know.
Oh, Jesus.
They were like, he's big on dancing things, like, you know, with the whole Funkasaurus, and then even Too Cold Scorpio had a dance, and then he was like in his head, I just need somebody to
call my mama.
so he needed like somebody to come out and dance. Vince had a thing with dancing, and people come out dancing. Like, yeah, like No Way Jose was an exact copy of Adam Rose and like the whole conga line.
Rosebuds, the bullshit.
They were trying to live on that. And it's a fun comedy, quick segment. They're obviously not going to be WWE champion or anything like that, but it's like your comedy, right? And, you know, I don't know what they were thinking. You know,
and that's fine because we love our comedy people.
Yeah.
Santino Marella.
Gold.
I mean, there are just people who know how to do it and do it perfectly every single time they go out. And these people, they had gimmicks, but they just didn't have fucking personalities.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, and you know, they had a lot of cool groups down there too. You know, like we were talking about. You talked about the Ascension, how cool they remind me of like a.
That was the first big tag team that they built, and
it's like Demolition to me in a way, right? Like they were.
Yeah, they tried to do like a mix of Demolition and Legion of Doom.
Yeah,
and they were fucking dominant. They were untouchable in NXT.
Yep. And then once again, it's like, oh, because maybe somebody didn't create them. I keep going back to that, but that's one of my things. Like, why didn't it work?
You really feel like it was a dislike of the people that they were building?
I don't know how he or Vince would, you know, like, I want this guy to be my champ. I don't know how he viewed his toys in his toy box, right? So I don't know who he like. Was it because, well, these are my guys that I made. What can I do? Oh, you're giving me these toys. I didn't really have anything to do in making them, so I don't. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'll use this one. Maybe I'll not.
This is why I disagree with that. Okay. I disagree with that completely because if he doesn't see some value in it, in something that's going to make money, why the fuck is he going to pay them more and bring them up to the main roster? That doesn't make sense to me. I can't see him on a consistent basis bringing people up just to shit on them to get them out of the company. Because essentially you got to pay them more, you got to give them a bigger deal, blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. What the fuck is the point of that? That's why, to me, when people always say it's Vince trying to just shit on Triple H's creations, no, he just saw talent, thought maybe it might work differently or needed to be repackaged because you're not going to agree with everything in terms of a presentation or whatever. Yeah. Like, okay, the War Raiders, great tag team. But when they came up to the main roster, they had to change the name, the Viking Raiders. You know, it's not always going to be the same. And he just sees things differently. And if it works, it works. If not, oh fucking well.
Yeah, all right.
I don't see it as a malicious. Well, maybe some of them, like.
Well, you know, on top of that group too, you're saying like even like Sanity, the Vaudevillains.
That's the one that comes to mind for me.
You know, Sanity had a lot of talented people in there. Eric Young, Nikki Cross, Alexander Wolf, who was in there, Killian Dane, who was in there.
They had a great little gimmick going. They had great personalities. I think if anybody ever wants to make the argument of Vince hating certain acts from NXT, I could see him hating that one because Eric Young.
Yeah.
I can see him hating Eric Young because I felt when it came to TNA talent that was homegrown, it's the same type of way that you would feel against him with WCW talent.
Sure.
Which is why Sting got shit on or whatever WCW wrestler came. Diamond Dallas Page. The list goes on. I felt like a lot of those guys from TNA got shit on because of, and maybe that's why Bobby Roode, who we talked about earlier, maybe that's why. Maybe he just had a hatred for the competition's homegrown talent, whereas nowadays they embrace other companies' homegrown talent because they know how to make them huge stars. Like, okay, Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe was a Ring of Honor and TNA. He didn't have the greatest WWE run, but he had some great moments, and he had an awesome run in TNA. I mean, he was in world title matches. I mean, doesn't get better than that, right?
So then how did they get Lars Sullivan on that? How did we get to that point?
I want to know. Well, listen.
Who is also earlier this year, I don't know if he was arrested, but he was accused of threatening a female spa owner.
I saw that.
That was the
there
first
was
time I heard
other
of
things
Lars.
he was accused of, which you know, knowing Vince and his kinky ways, maybe that's where he discovered him on one of those videos.
Maybe. Yeah, it's Lars fans or only Lars fans, maybe .com. I don't know if it's
That's
a lot
a
of
good
weird.
one.
Well, forget Lars.
Well,
Lars is a
no,
whole
let's actually talk about that because that was somebody who had potential. Let's be honest. When he was down at NXT, he had that Bruno Sammartino look. It was more of a power lifter look as opposed to a bodybuilder look.
Yeah.
And it was completely different, and he was just demolishing people. And dude, I love the presentation. He had great little music coming down to the ring. He had some cool shit.
No, yeah.
And then they said he was coming to the main roster, and then he just never did.
Yeah.
And they said he had some like mental breakdown or some shit like
Well,
that.
yeah, they had one or two things where he came out and like said something, and it was like ridiculous. I don't even. Whatever, right? And it was just one of those things like, what did they do? What happened? Like, what did Vince do? Or
and
what
then
did
he
they
disappeared.
And that's it. And then like all those accusation things came out and whatever else.
That was even after the fact when they basically said he was having some like nervous breakdown or some shit. Like he was scared of being on the big stage.
Yep.
That's what people were trying to say. I was like, really?
No, for sure. I mean, even look at guys like another big guy, Keith Lee, right? One of the huge fan base in NXT.
Yes.
People loved him. Comes to the main roster. Trying to figure out what to do with him. And then he had that moment with Brock before COVID. And then
Big boy.
Then it fell apart. That was it. They never met. That was it. They met in the ring for the Rumble. And then COVID happened. And then he left and yada, yada, yada. But like, you know, Keith Lee. And then like where he is now, he was sick. I think COVID affected him so bad that he's been out medically because of that with breathing and stuff. So I don't know if it kind of ruined his career too. But one of those blips on the radar where
No. Listen.
No?
I'm going to say this.
Uh-oh.
For you big people out there, breathing all that air, and you got COVID and you can't breathe, here's a thought. Try losing a few pounds. He's a big guy. And I hate to say that because he was even big down in NXT. He was big when he hit the main roster. He was so big when he hit the main roster, they made him wear that fucking shirt, remember?
Yeah, he had that,
Yeah. So, listen.
He's got a big physique, but it was like one of those
Shut
guys where the
fuck
top
up. He's a fat motherfucker and he needs to lose a few pounds. Let's be honest.
Well, because it was like the top didn't match the bottom. Like the top looked really big, but then the bottom looked really skinny. Or
So you're
like
saying he looks like a triangle?
He missed leg day, or I don't know. I never.
That's good. He looked like a triangle. That's what it's like me.
Well, he was like SpongeBob. Like he had skinny legs and then he was a square on top. More like SpongeBob, I think, than Patrick.
Oh God!
But I don't,
he looked more like SpongeBob.
and that's
than
how
Patrick.
we were canceled from calling him
Keith Lee.
Keith Lee,
I love
SpongeBob.
Keith Lee.
We love him. Yeah, we love him.
His run of matches with Donovan Dijak on the Indies is what brought him to the dance. And when they had that match on NXT, it was one of the greatest matches in the history of NXT. His talent is undeniable. His skill is undeniable. He can talk. He has ring psycho. He can do it all. Just get yourself in shape. Could you imagine what kind of career he would have had if he lost the weight the way that Walter did?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he would be WWE champ right now, and that's all there is to it. End of fucking conversation. Get in shape. Get TV ready, like Daddy, like me.
You're inspiring me. I'm gonna watch the at home angry cooter yoga session to like DDP and like get angry doing yoga and like lose some weight. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna report. But you mentioned Dijak real quick.
Okay.
Dijak, who just left, talking about him versus Keith Lee, great in NXT, moves up and they don't know what to do with him. And then he gets put with another group.
T-Bar.
T-Bar.
What a fucking name.
And I like this whole creation was like, are they trying to make Sanity, but now they're trying to make him more like this? And it's almost like a Wyatt creation, but it was
with the
like
stupid fucking masks.
So he was T-Bar, then went back to NXT, and now he's kind of like the big boss man. And they literally moved him up to Raw on the preliminary, whatever, at the post-Raw draft. They moved him to Raw, like as a tweet with 5 other guys who got moved up, not on the main show. Like they moved him up to Raw, and then they let him go like months later.
I just heard his interview on the radio with Busted Open, and I was just like, what the fuck? And what's crazy is when you put him in I don't even remember the group's name.
Yeah.
What the fuck was the group's name? It was so bad, it didn't last. And you know why?
Why?
Because the leader The leader was fucking Mustafa Ali.
I'ma go.
That's shitty fucking theme music. I'ma go hard. I'ma go hard. Shut the fuck up.
Check that in past episodes if you subscribe to us. That's going deep into that's exactly when it was happening.
We have to bring back the list of Credo.
Oh man, there's a list out there.
There's a list of Credo of everything that Credo hates in wrestling.
Well, do you ever just meet somebody and you just know you hate them? Like, there's a lot of people in wrestling where you just look at them like, nope, I hate them. I don't want to see anything they do. I don't care. I'm never going to become a fan of them.
Yeah,
there's a list like that, and it is what it is.
For instance, just throw a couple of them out there.
For instance, Nia Jax, the Jolly Green Giant, as we refer to her.
NXT alumni, so it fits with the show.
NXT alumni. I don't agree with her look, and no, not because she's big boned like me. She had mud flaps on her outfit. She did. Look it up. She had like flaps, and
We're canceled.
We're canceled. She had mud flaps. And she's changed those since. She's changed those. But no, she's just one of those wrestlers I just didn't like. She was hurting a lot of people. And every time we saw something with her, it was like somebody's out injured. Somebody got a bloody nose. And it's just like, does she know what she's doing? And it was just like one of those things like, I don't like you. I just don't care for you. You're the queen now, whatever.
All right. So top of the list of Credo, I thought was just going to be every Japanese wrestler ever. But apparently it's Nia Jax because of her mud flaps. Little did I know.
That's it. That's part of the list. I have to go through my lists again. I'm sure we're going to interview her one day, and that's how we're going to start the interview. So remember episode 257?
Did you ever measure the size of the mud flaps?
Oh my goodness. We talked a lot. So besides my list, that could be a whole new show. I'll have to come up with a brand new one. I got to even find the old one too. Maybe we could dig that up. But, we talked about the good. We talked about the bad. Let's talk about, there was some ugly, but not ugly. Maybe some ugly trying to find beauty. I don't know.
Or people that didn't even necessarily make it.
Yeah. So it's like they had a name. They didn't really, I don't know. They transitioned over there, but like it just fell flat, right? I don't know.
Let's start with the obvious.
The obvious, just two of the biggest names I think in the beginning for me was Kenta. Kenta came in at the time where they were changing people's names on NXT and like having a video reveal. So when he came in, there wasn't Kenta anymore. It was Hideo Itami. And so, going back to how everybody knew him was, that's how Punk got his finisher, was from Kenta. Like a Japanese star in his prime to where coming over here now he's kind of like, you're big over in one place doesn't mean you're big over here kind of a thing. There's a little...
See, I don't even think that was the problem. He just kept getting fucking injured.
Yep, he was out for a while each time.
A couple of times. And he just never seemed to get into a groove. And then I feel like at one point they just tried to put him in the cruiserweight division until his contract expired.
Yeah.
But, I mean, how about this one?
Yeah.
None of the members of this group, Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish, Adam Cole, never made it to the main roster. Even though Adam Cole, I believe, didn't he have a match against Daniel Bryan? And won, I feel like. And he was in the Rumble one year.
Yeah.
But he never was an official member of the main roster.
Wow. It's almost like when you look at these shows, and I can't keep blaming, who's in charge, but it's like when you look at these shows, there's so much talent on it, right? So it's like, how much talent do you actually need to run each show efficiently to where, okay, I already got my 10 guys right here, right? Now you're adding 15, and now I'm like, okay, I could probably use him, and then people just get like lost in this machine, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's almost like as good as the talent is, as big as the name maybe it was, they get thrown into this cog of wheels, and it's just like they try to find their spot on this cog, and it's just like, I don't know, they just don't know what they can't get it.
And the problem with that
makes sense, right?
No, it does because I remember there was a point where NXT got insanely popular, and they were originally in a 1-hour show, and then it became a 2-hour show. Then they started running their own pay-per-views. They were having weekends with SummerSlam and WrestleMania, so they were part of those giant weekends.
Yeah.
The brand itself got turned into a third brand.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I feel like Vince just raided all of the talent.
Yeah.
All at once, like one fellow swoop, and it was like, let's see what you could do now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you kind of left them with some B-level guys, and then, dude, they just made new people like Velveteen Dream, and then fucking Ricochet came in, and EC3 came in.
And so a name that I moved down from the beginning, where we had it up before, is a group I want to bring up right now. It's a perfect transition.
Okay.
Is DIY.
DIY.
Do you?
And I'm
yourself.
the drunk one.
Do it yourself. Do it yourself. Johnny Gargano. And I can't even think. I'm horrible.
Tommaso Ciampa.
Tommaso Ciampa.
Come on, tell everybody what you said about Ciampa all those years ago.
You got to pay for that, guys. So stay tuned for the 15-minute fray now. So DIY, Tommaso. So these guys were main eventing at the time of the gold brand for NXT, and that's when like Vince took it over.
Yeah.
And that's where it was like they were the biggest that they could be in NXT world. And then when what happened, Triple H was out, Vince took it over. They weren't the biggest. It was like a weird transition period to where then they finally got moved up to the main roster.
And I feel like they didn't want to go to the main roster. I think they were enjoying their time down there.
And I feel like they knew if they moved, because that was at that time too, people were saying it's almost like a death sentence. You're going from the NXT to the main roster, and at that time they were cutting a lot of these like big like talents where we're not going to go through the whole list and name it again, but you know what I mean? Like some of these names that were coming up, they were falling short, and they're like, I'm having a good time here. I don't want to get up there and get lost in the mix again. To where going back to the story, like the roster is just bloated, right? So it's like it was almost like every year you had that guaranteed
Did they get
NXT
moved up
call up
before or after COVID?
I think it was after. I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm bad. This isn't a fact show.
Yeah,
we can't do facts on
Well,
here.
no, the only reason I
times,
asked that
also Google it.
is that was at the time where COVID, they started releasing a lot of talent.
Yeah.
Because you remember pre-COVID, they were trying to hire anybody and everybody just because they didn't want AEW to have them. And they would keep them in NXT and they would pay them. Yep. It is what it is. But then once COVID hit and they're not making, the money from the fucking crowds, et cetera, that's when they started doing the releases. And I'm sitting here wondering, is it more of a death sentence to sit in NXT and just stay over, or is it more of a death sentence to get put on the main roster and potentially get cut? It was either way, people were getting released, so it didn't really matter at that time where you were going. If you weren't over, you were gone.
No, yep, that's it. And that was like I just went back to that point because it was two of the biggest guys in NXT at that time, and now they didn't know if they were going to go up there. And once they went up there, they're now doing their old NXT gimmick that they did down in there, where they had actually Dexter Lumis and all them together under DIY. And so I don't know, some things happen, some things turn out for the good, some things turn out for the worst. Some things are probably still in motion, like them, DIY, still trying to find themselves in the main roster by just being the brand new tag team champions, finally winning it. But they didn't even win it at Money in the Bank. They won it on the SmackDown before. But I guess they got to keep changing things up to keep people guessing.
Weren't you happy that happened on SmackDown and didn't make your Saturday night like a 4-hour thing? Because I feel like that's a big moment. That was a cool moment. I think that was the main event.
Yeah.
Right? For SmackDown, if I'm not mistaken?
I think so.
And that was something that deserved to be a main event. Tommaso Ciampa was probably one of the best heels ever in NXT.
Yep.
Right? As a singles. But the chemistry him and Johnny had as a tag, because they brought them in, they weren't even supposed to stay there, from my understanding. Yeah. They got brought in that Dusty Rhodes tag team tournament or whatever it was, just as fillers, and I think they got over, and then they got offered deals.
Yeah, because they made some appearances on the main roster, but it wasn't like they moved up. It was a weird thing at the time where they were doing like a special NXT match showcase, and then that was like it. And I was like, oh, that was the first time they were on the main roster, but then they were still working NXT.
I feel like them winning the belts makes sense. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, these guys fucking suck. I'm like, just enjoy wrestling. You don't have to like but they just complain about everything.
Yeah.
And yes, some of y'all in your comments, I said what I said last week, and I stand on that shit. If you don't like, stop watching. I'll never understand that.
No.
Because I was super excited for them when they finally won the belts in NXT. against the Revival. And the Revival, that was another awesome tag team. I mean, that's the one thing about NXT I love. It wasn't the fact that they had built a women's revolution.
Yeah.
It wasn't the fact that they had great single stars. They also single-handedly made tag teams. Now, granted, we've had some flops on the main roster when it came to tags. AOP comes to mind. Sanity comes to mind. I mean, there's been some flops. But, again, like we said, not everything translates from NXT to the main roster. You know, it's not always going to work. But to say that they weren't over down there,
Yeah.
you got to give it a shot and see if it works. If it's, what the fuck else can you do?
What are you drinking again?
An unofficial, non-sponsor. This is a Patron Silver.
Brought to you by Patron Silver.
No, it's not, Credo. You can't do that.
If we do it, we can email them the clip, and then they...
Oh, yeah, because they want to see all you talking about Nia Jax's mud flaps, and they're going to want to be associated with that. Great job. Cut the fucking show. We're done.
I apologize.